A mistake that at first looked harmless forced KLM to suddenly ground almost a third of its Boeing 787 Dreamliner fleet. But the most alarming part didn't end there. Hidden beneath that sleek, high-tech exterior, they uncovered a defect that had been silently lurking for a long time without anyone realizing it. And if it hadn't been found in time, it could have turned into a catastrophic event in the skies. So, what exactly is happening with KLM's 787s? Since its introduction, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner has been hailed as the peak of aviation innovation. Lighter, more fuel-efficient, and capable of flying longer distances. This plane quickly became a source of pride for many airlines, KLM included. With their advanced Dreamliner fleet, KLM once confidently operated some of the longest international flights, until an unexpected problem completely changed everything. During what should have been a routine inspection, engineers stumbled upon a concealed flaw in the refueling system, a critical part that keeps flights safe. What's truly unsettling is that this error wasn't the result of a mechanical failure or a design flaw. It actually came from human error, as the special maintenance steps for the 787 had been incorrectly followed over a long period of time. You wouldn't believe how severe this mistake really was. The refueling system on a Boeing 787 demands extremely strict inspections and precise maintenance routines. Even a tiny error can disrupt fuel pressure, shift the center of gravity, and jeopardize safety during ground refueling operations. In a recent internal review, KLM identified a major oversight. 7 out of their 24 Boeing 787s had been maintained using procedures meant for the Boeing 777. These two aircraft models have huge differences in their fuel system designs, including everything from operating pressures and pipe layouts to how pressure is controlled. Using the wrong maintenance routine could easily cause important checks to be skipped or done incorrectly. This error remained hidden for years, while the planes were in operation without detection. When KLM engineers started examining maintenance records in detail, they spotted irregularities in data linked to the fuel intake system. As soon as this came to light, KLM alerted Boeing. After thorough cross-checking, Boeing confirmed that the maintenance performed on those 7 Dreamliners didn't meet the strict standards developed specifically for the 787. Most strikingly, the incident triggered chaos that was extremely hard to control. But what made this mistake especially dangerous was the unique nature of the Dreamliner itself, one of the most complex passenger jets ever created. Dreamliner maintenance isn't something that can be improvised. Unlike older aircraft built mainly from conventional aluminum alloys, nearly all of the Boeing 787's fuselage is crafted from ultralight carbon composite material. This innovation allows the plane to travel farther and burn less fuel, but it also demands an entirely different approach to upkeep. Micro cracks in composites are far harder to spot than in aluminum, requiring advanced scanning tools after every flight cycle. Not only that, the Dreamliner is also the first Boeing aircraft to drastically cut down on traditional hydraulic systems, replacing them with advanced high-voltage electrical systems that manage many critical functions. Even within the fuel system itself, the pressure controls and monitoring mechanisms are far more complicated, demanding careful checks of every sensor and each safety valve. Simply confusing the maintenance procedures between two aircraft models with totally different materials and systems, like the 777 and the 787, can easily result in essential inspection steps being skipped without anyone realizing it, until those small oversights gradually build up into a major hazard. It could have ended in a disaster. In the aviation world, the refueling system isn't just the place where fuel gets pumped in before takeoff. It's an intricate network of pipes, sensors, and safety valves working under high pressure, with every tiny detail precisely regulated. Even a slight shift in pressure or a minor leak can upset the aircraft's center of gravity in flight. trigger an explosion during refueling, or damage the wings and fuselage because of abnormal fuel pressure. On the Boeing 787, inspecting this system is even more demanding because of its lightweight composite materials, which are more sensitive to pressure imbalances. Using the Boeing 777's maintenance routine on the 787 meant that specific checks tailored for composite structures were simply left out. Technical experts warn that if this problem hadn't been caught in time, maintenance mistakes could have slowly piled up into a real danger. After each flight cycle, especially when the aircraft completes hundreds of long-haul trips, each lasting 10 to 13 hours, the stress and pressure on the fuel system steadily increase, forming potential weak spots. The refueling process on the ground usually happens under high pressure to speed up turnaround between flights. Even the tiniest crack in a valve, joint, or fuel line, issues that should have been flagged using the proper procedure, poses a threat of fuel vapor leaking right next to the hot engines, raising the risk of a fire. Throughout aviation history, there have been terrifying accidents rooted in failures of the refueling system. In 1996, a fuel tank explosion on a Boeing 747 operating TWA Flight 800 off New York's coast killed all 230 passengers and crew. Investigators traced it back to a buildup of fuel vapor inside the tank, ignited by a spark from aging electrical wires, which set off a catastrophic explosion. Or consider the 2010 incident when an Airbus A380 belonging to Qantas narrowly avoided tragedy after an engine explosion caused a massive fuel leak mid-air. Though the crew managed to land safely, later inspections found that the fuel loss had brought the plane dangerously close to losing control hundreds of kilometers away from the airport. That's why, as soon as KLM uncovered this maintenance error, all 7 Boeing 787s were immediately taken out of service for thorough inspections, even though no actual incident had yet occurred. What makes this situation even more chilling is the fact that the mistake had quietly persisted through hundreds of flights without detection. If the engineering team hadn't done their records review exactly when they did, the danger might only have come to light once it was too late. And once the error was revealed, the real shockwave began to spread across the ground operations, setting off a chain reaction of chaos that KLM was completely unprepared to control. Everything spun out of control the moment the maintenance error was officially confirmed. KLM had no choice but to make the urgent call to ground all 7 affected Boeing 787s without delay. In just a few hours, nearly 1/3 of the airline's Dreamliner fleet was out of service. For an airline that relies heavily on long-haul routes, this sudden shock unleashed an unprecedented domino effect. Numerous critical international flights were either cancelled outright or hit with severe delays. Among the worst disruptions was the Amsterdam-Mexico City route, one of the most in demand since the pandemic eased. Flight KL 685, carrying 250 passengers ready for departure, was forced to delay for over 24 hours. Other routes didn't fare any better. Flights bound for Chicago and Portland were delayed between 3 and 5 hours, leaving hundreds of passengers stranded at the airport, missing onward connections, falling behind on work commitments, and watching family plans collapse. On that first day alone, more than 650 passengers were directly impacted, and that didn't include thousands of connecting travelers passing through Amsterdam, who began to feel the ripple effects over the following days. KLM's operations centers were instantly overwhelmed. Scrambling to consolidate flights, secure replacement aircraft, and arrange emergency accommodation for stranded passengers all had to happen in crisis mode. Many travelers had to be rebooked onto partner airlines, or even direct competitors like Lufthansa, British Airways, and Emirates, driving up KLM's compensation costs. Even more troubling, KLM was left with almost no spare aircraft in its long-haul fleet. The entire system, already operating at maximum capacity in the post-pandemic travel surge, suddenly faced an abrupt shortage. Just one additional technical issue on another aircraft could have threatened to unravel the whole international network. But the fallout didn't end with cancelled flights. A massive blow to both finances and reputation began spreading quickly as aircraft stopped flying. Financial losses multiplied almost overnight. Each cancelled long-haul flight meant forfeiting all revenue from more than 250 passenger seats, not to mention income from extras like paid meals, baggage fees, seat upgrades, and other services. With average ticket prices on intercontinental routes ranging from $800 to $1,500 per person, canceling a single flight could cost KLM several $100,000 in lost revenue. And that was only the visible part of the problem. Underneath it all loomed a huge compensation burden. According to EU 261 rules set by the European Union, every passenger delayed more than 3 hours is entitled to compensation of 300 to 600 euros, depending on flight distance. With over 650 passengers directly affected on the first day alone, the compensation payouts could easily climb into the hundreds of thousands of dollars within just 2 days. And that didn't even count the costs of hotels, transportation, and replacement tickets on other airlines, including rivals, that KLM had to cover immediately to avoid losing customer trust. But in the long run, the most serious damage lay somewhere deeper. Reputation. KLM is a cornerstone of the SkyTeam alliance. When its connecting flights were cancelled, the impact went far beyond its own passengers. The entire global codeshare network was thrown into turmoil. Travelers flying Delta, Korean Air, and China Airlines, who relied on Amsterdam connections, suddenly found themselves hunting for emergency alternatives, putting extra pressure on KLM's alliance partners. The relationships between KLM and its codeshare airlines are now at risk of being strained. In the world of airline alliances, a carrier with unreliable schedules quickly becomes the weak link that threatens the strength of the whole network. More importantly, the most valuable group of customers, elite Flying Blue members and frequent business travelers, began to lose patience. These are precisely the people most likely to switch to powerful competitors like Lufthansa, British Airways, or Emirates, all of which stand ready to seize any opportunity to capture the premium market. "I've completely lost trust, and now I'll look for better options," admitted a young businessman. In the end, the party that bore the heaviest burden was still Boeing. Boeing suffered an especially painful blow. Technically, this entire incident wasn't caused by a design fault in Boeing's aircraft. The problem arose because KLM mistakenly applied maintenance procedures intended for a different aircraft model. But for the general public, these technical details are often hard to understand or simply ignored. What most people saw was just another headline linking the Boeing 787 Dreamliner to a safety scare. The real issue was the broader context. Not long ago, Boeing had endured one of the most severe crises in aviation history with the 737 MAX, after 2 tragic crashes killed 346 people. Boeing's reputation, once the gold standard for safety in the skies, was left in tatters worldwide. Even the Dreamliner itself had already been surrounded by controversy over production flaws, cracks in composite materials, and misaligned fuselage sections, issues that forced Boeing to suspend deliveries on a massive scale between 2020 and 2022. Every single negative story connected to the 787, no matter how indirect, adds another wound to passenger confidence that was already badly damaged. This maintenance error at KLM immediately became a magnet for media coverage worldwide. Photos of multiple grounded 787 Dreamliners lined up at Schiphol Airport quickly dominated the headlines. On passenger forums, debates reignited about Boeing's reliability, even though, in this case, the manufacturer wasn't directly at fault. Anxiety about Boeing aircraft doesn't just come from everyday travelers. It even surfaces among people who once worked deep inside the company, who now openly voice their unease. Ed Pearson, a former senior manager at Boeing, has repeatedly said in interviews that he would personally rather skip a flight than ever board a Boeing 737 MAX again. For him, the safety of that aircraft still isn't fully proven, no matter what assurances the company has offered since the disasters. Would you fly one? Oh no, you won't fly anymore. Not just the 737 MAX, he stated bluntly. In a detailed investigative report by Al Jazeera, many workers at the 787 Dreamliner assembly line also spoke out about their fears. Some employees went as far as saying, "I would never fly on a 787. These statements reflect an unsettling truth. Trust has been lost, even among the very people who once built the aircraft, promoted as the crown jewel of modern aviation technology. So, when you ask a simple question, would I, fly the MAX? The answers can be disturbingly hesitant. I got on, I won't fly the MAX. But the financial losses and the wave of reputation damage are only the most visible part of the crisis. The deeper threat to KLM may continue to spread quietly, undermining the entire system and customer loyalty for many years to come. Long-term domino risks for KLM. In the aviation industry, major technical problems rarely end with a few canceled flights or some compensation payouts. They almost always leave behind long-lasting consequences that are hard to measure, especially when they hit airlines with complex interconnected networks like KLM. As soon as the incident emerged, KLM had to scramble to rotate aircraft and reorganize flight schedules to make up for the loss of those 7 grounded 787s. But the solution wasn't as simple as just reshuffling a few planes. Since the pandemic, most airlines have been flying almost their entire fleets to meet the rebound in demand. Spare aircraft have all but disappeared, and flight schedules are already fine-tuned to squeeze every ounce of efficiency and cost savings. Every Dreamliner pulled out of service creates an immediate gap that is incredibly difficult to fill, threatening to throw the entire long-haul network into a domino effect of disruption. And it's not just the long-haul flights that take a hit. KLM's SkyTeam Alliance partners feel the shockwaves too. KLM is a vital link in connecting passengers traveling from the US, Asia, and Africa through Amsterdam. When instability drags on, partner airlines start questioning whether the alliance as a whole can still be trusted to run reliably. In an interdependent network, just a single persistent weak spot can eventually shatter long-term strategic confidence. Beyond the operational chaos, KLM faces an even more unpredictable threat: losing its most important passengers to hungry competitors. Today's global market is fiercely competitive, and rival airlines are always waiting for any chance to win over premium customers who feel let down. Emirates, Qatar Airways, British Airways, and Lufthansa all have large, modern fleets, reliable premium cabins, and robust intercontinental schedules, exactly the space KLM depends on to maintain its status. If frequent business travelers, loyal elite members, and international tourists begin shifting to those competitors, the damage isn't limited to a few empty business-class seats. It becomes a slow but steady erosion of market share, revenue, and global influence, assets that took decades to build but could begin to unravel in just a few months of crisis. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner was once celebrated as a giant leap in aviation technology. But the episode at KLM highlights an uncomfortable truth. The more advanced aircraft become, the more complicated they are to maintain and operate. And within all that complexity, the most dangerous risks don't always lurk in the sky. They can hide in the smallest details on the ground. Just one maintenance mistake, stemming from confusion between two different aircraft models, was enough to trigger a chain reaction. Grounded planes, paralyzed international operations, huge financial losses, a battered brand image, and, above all, fresh doubts about Boeing's name, which was already struggling to keep hold of public trust. In aviation, there are no small errors, because any error can come with an enormous cost. And while this time KLM was fortunate to catch the problem before disaster struck, the most unsettling question remains. How many other hidden mistakes are still out there, waiting to be discovered?